Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I'm G, and
I'm D.
welcome everybody. We've got a fully packed show tonight, so we're going to be discussing a couple polls and some things going on the national scene, and maybe a surprise or two. So, Chris, let's jump into it with you. You got a poll for us to look at?
Absolutely. We're almost finished with primary season. It's hard to believe that we're even talking about any primaries, but there is a major primary left on the docket. It's going to happen next Tuesday, September 1st, in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And Massachusetts, not like when I was growing up in rural Oklahoma when people said Massachusetts. I'll probably get in trouble for saying that. But
Right.
Massachusetts has got an interesting primary going on. And
yeah, that's a great race.
Yeah, UMass at Lowell, which shout out to Lowell, Massachusetts, hometown. One of my favorite authors, Jack Kerouac.
Right.
But they've got a great, and also it used to be home. I don't know if they're still there, but they used to have a little minor league hockey team called the Lowell Devils, which was a lot of fun. All right, so enough of my sidebars. An interesting Senate race going on with setting U.S. Senator Ed Markey running for his second term as a U.S. Senator. And he's got a high-profile challenger, U.S. Representative Joe Kennedy III. And pretty high-profile name there. Some high-profile endorsements. Ed Markey's gotten great endorsements from his other senator, Elizabeth Warren. He's been endorsed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because he's the Senate sponsor of the Green New Deal. Been endorsed by Bernie Sanders, a lot of other high-profile progressives. Joe Kennedy was endorsed last week by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, which was interesting because most of the time the leadership tends to endorse the incumbents, and so but
right.
she felt like that Joe Kennedy wasn't getting that good of a coverage, or felt like that his record wasn't being represented as well. I wondered a little bit too if there might be some Senate versus House kind of demographics going, but their poll they have right now shows Markey with a 12-point lead on Kennedy, which is pretty amazing considering the history of the Kennedy name and the history of those Senate seats up in Massachusetts.
Right.
I'm going to throw a couple other numbers out, and then I'll get your thoughts, G-Man. But probably the most interesting thing of that poll, besides the fact that Markey's up by such a high number, is this is a poll of likely voters in the Democratic primary. They asked them about the current job performance of the current governor, who is Republican Governor Charlie Baker. And so that's where some of the really interesting numbers to me and some of the other folks who are following this.
Yeah, those numbers really kind of made me take notice.
Yeah, 89% of likely Democratic primary voters approve of the job that Baker's doing, a sitting Republican governor. And that's 54% strongly approve. So nearly 9 in 10 Democratic likely voters approve of the job he's doing, which speaks pretty good volumes for the fact that he is doing a good job, as most Republicans in Massachusetts, when they are elected, have to do. He's done a nice job reaching across the aisle. He's done a nice job working with the other side, and modeled the model. If you model the model, I use the word twice, but he's really shown the way for how leaders used to behave, particularly when they faced a large majority opposition. And so when you contrast his numbers with those same likely Democratic voters, 92% of those folks think the country's headed in the wrong track, and only 7%. So let's compare that again. Let's just so that we got the right numbers here. 89% approve of the job Baker's doing. 7%, SEVEN% approve of the job President Donald Trump is doing. So 89% versus 7%. Huge disparity there.
Right.
And reminds me almost of the popularity that another governor had a while back, two actually, former Governor Mitt Romney of Massachusetts, and then also former Governor William Weld.
Yeah. As you know, I was a early Romney fan. when he was governor up there. I thought he could do big things. I think he would have made a great president if he had been elected the first time that he ran. And then the second time he ran, the Tea Party, which has been a great influence on the GOP, pushed him hard to the right. And of course, he had his 47% comment, which we've talked about in other podcasts, that pretty much did him in. For the life of me, and we'll talk about this here in a second, I don't understand why public figures or anybody that is somewhat in the spotlight doesn't realize that there are cameras everywhere and they're often on.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I thought Mitt Romney was a great governor. He basically implemented the early version of Obamacare, which I think they still call it Romney Care up there. I just, I thought he was a pretty good governor. I don't know much about their current governor. These poll numbers certainly beg the question of what's next for him.
Absolutely. And, the interesting thing to me is that there's a lot of angst, if you will, among the Republican Party, how when you look at how a lot of the U.S. Senate seats, a lot of the U.S. House seats used to be held in the Northeast that were held by moderate Republicans, and moderate Republicans are pretty endangered. I think the last senator that's left in that area is Susan Collins, and she's in deep trouble in her reelection effort this time. However, I think that the Republican Party would be wise to look at the example of governors in the Northeast quadrant and look at some of the ways that they've governed. You've got Charlie Baker in Massachusetts. You see his popularity.
Yep.
You've got Larry Hogan in the state of Maryland. He has extreme popularity. And then a lot of people don't realize it, but the governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, is a Republican. Yep. And he's done, by all accounts, done a great job. And by great job, I mean the fact that they're moderates. They recognize that the overwhelming majority of their states tend to be moderate to progressive on the left side. And so they've looked for compromises. They look for ways to lead. And we all know through the pandemic that our country has had to look to governors for leadership because they've not received the kind of leadership they expect from a president.
Right, absolutely. So, great. Well, let's, if we're done with that topic, do you have anything else for that, Chris?
No, I think that's, I think it'll be interesting to, we're gonna have a podcast coming up in the next few weeks where we're gonna talk about 2024. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see when we start talking about that, some of these governors that are from the Northeast Republican wing of the party, how they stack up against some of the folks who are going to try to embrace Trump and Trumpism very closely, especially from the Midwest and the South.
Right, and from Trump's own family.
Absolutely. So we were talking earlier about you mentioned how politicians don't always realize that the camera could be or most likely is always on. So I know there was a news story that came out today where the current occupant of 1600 Black Lives Matter Way was caught on camera during a deposition. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the story?
Yeah, so Mother Jones broke this story. The deposition itself has been sealed, but somebody leaked the downtime. They had taken a break, and Mr. Trump was speaking to one of his lawyers, and he talked about a couple different things. But the thing that really caught my eye was, so this was a deposition for Trump University. Some quick background on that, if you don't know. Trump had a business called Trump University where he purported to train you to be as successful as he is. If somebody could teach me how to file for bankruptcy 6 different times and still come out with $300 or $400 million, I'd certainly welcome the info on that. But participants paid anywhere from $2,500 up to $10,000 to participate in this program, and what they got was a bunch of hacks that really didn't know much, and they never saw Trump, and the program was basically a sham. I know opponents of Trump are just shocked at that. But basically, the students sued the university, and then because Trump himself had advertised it, they sued Trump individually. So this was in a deposition for that lawsuit, and he was speaking to his attorney, and the camera kept rolling. So this got leaked to Mother Jones today. And in the thing that caught me was how racist he was about his judge. He later came out and said, the guy's from Mexico, we're building a wall down there. He doesn't like that, so he's not fit to judge me. And he pretty much got a major rebuke from just about everybody at the time. And turns out the judge was born in Ohio. And it just is amazing to me how people in that position in life think they can get away with the things that Trump has gotten away with. So yeah, it was pretty amazing today.
Yeah, it's pretty random, and the fact that he was bragging also about the fact that I believe they received a D rating from the Better Business Bureau,
right?
And that he had basically said he bribed the Better Business Bureau,
right?
And was able to get that up to an A.
Well, you know who did that? That's got to be Cohen that stepped in and did that.
Mr. Fixer.
Mr. Fixer, because he basically, it's barely audible, but you can make it out. He basically said, they threatened to sue him, and they changed the rating, and then ultimately, just to wrap things up with this, how this all played out, Trump was successful in getting the trial delayed. It was a topic during one of the debates where he basically told the debate crowd and his fellow GOPers on stage that, we'll see, I don't settle, and, we'll see how this plays out in the next 2 years. And then as soon as he got the nomination, went behind the scenes and settled for what most people believe to be a paltry $25 million.
Yeah.
So
not too shabby. I mean, that guy seems to fail into buckets of cash. So.
Yep, you're right about that. He seems to go through it pretty fast as well.
Absolutely.
So,
all right,
moving on.
Yeah. So there was an article that came out on the Daily Beast today where they talked about a podcast where Mary Trump, and I know you've read her book or are reading it right now.
I finished it.
G-Man, you finished it. I know you're a big fan of the book. And but she was a guest on the new Abnormal podcast out with Rick Wilson and Molly Jong Fast. And the topic of this particular podcast, all things Trump, obviously, but it ended up getting around to what would happen if Trump decided to make a change at the VP slot. And I know Mike Pence accepted the nomination last night, but let's say we have the first presidential debate, and I'm not sure when the vice presidential debate is exactly in the flow, but it's either after the first debate or after the second presidential debate. And let's say Trump has two really bad debates, and then Pence has a terrible debate. Poll numbers are bad, and Trump is faced with some internal polling where it said, if you had X, Y, or Z as your vice president, you would be within the margin of error as opposed to being about 10 to 15 points down. The question is, would Trump make that choice? Would he decide to make a switch at that point? Would Mike Pence, would he feign some type of illness or some reason, the ostensible need to spend more time with my family excuse that politicians use all the time when they want to resign?
Right.
And then Trump be able to pick a new vice president? And if he did, who would it be? And I'm of the premise that Donald Trump will do whatever it takes to win. And if he thinks that dropping Pence will help him win, he'll do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Here's that debate schedule. September 29th is the first presidential debate. Trying to see here. October 15th. October 7th is the VP debate. October 15th is the second debate, presidential debate. October 22nd. So all within about a month.
Yeah, so let's say, so following that schedule, let's say Trump has a really bad first debate. And before everybody just wants to attack me and say I'm just a Trump hater, I'm not a fan of his. But I will tell you, history shows us that most sitting presidents struggle in the very first debate.
Yep.
And here's why. Because they're super busy with the job. They obviously have the pressures of the day in, day out work that they have to do. And they also
Trump ought
come
to be
in.
stellar then.
Yeah, true.
He doesn't have any of that.
I said traditional, but this last piece I think will apply to him is most sitting presidents come into their first debate thinking, I'm the president. I don't need to prepare for this like I did as a candidate.
Right.
The challenger is going to need to prepare much more than I am because I'm the president. So they come in with a lot of hubris. And if you go back to 2012, which is the last time we had a sitting president running for re-election, Mitt Romney cleaned Barack Obama's clock on the very first debate. I mean, Obama wasn't ready. His answers were flat. He seemed annoyed. And that's what happens to a lot of sitting presidents. So I can see Trump having a really bad first debate. And then I'm going to go ahead and I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. I think Kamala Harris is going to mop the floor with Mike Pence.
Yep.
I don't think she's going to hold back. I don't think it's going to be I think he's not going to know exactly how to debate her. He's not going to be ready for her. He's going to do a lot of head shaking. And so you have, boom, really bad presidential debate for Trump. You have a really bad vice presidential debate. And I could see Trump at that point wanting to do something impulsive.
Yeah, I do too. I think, and I think he would do it. I think he would pull the trigger and put somebody else in there. So
that being said, we both
on who that would be.
Yeah, we both agree that it could happen. I think the odds-on favorite for that is going to be former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley.
Right.
She obviously would give him female balance to the ticket. She's also Indian American or Southeast Asian American. I don't know if she's Indian or I can't remember, or Pakistani, but she has that Southern Asian roots. And so in Trump's mind, he might even say this could balance out running against Kamala Harris, even though completely different backgrounds, completely different areas of the country. But I think she would be the odds-on favorite. There's another name that Mary Trump floated and said she wouldn't be surprised at all if he made that type of impulsive decision, if he wouldn't be looking for complete fealty and loyalty and named Ivanka Trump as his vice president.
Right. Well, I can tell you this, and you and I were just talking about this the other day. I pretty much bailed on House of Cards when the writers put Frank Underwood's wife as the VP, and I think the rest of the country would do the same on Trump if he made Ivanka his VP. I just think I think the country only has bandwidth for a certain amount of dynastic, family ties, and I think that would put him over the top on that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really was a strong negative for Hillary Clinton. Both times she ran was the fact that most of the time our country does not favor any type of dynasty, like you're saying. So, so I definitely think that could. What about you? Who do you think would be some other contenders for that VP slot?
Well, anybody who's not a white male would suffice. My guess is, and this is a small state, but she's a fiery politician. She's definitely in the Trump camp. Is South Dakota Governor? How do you say her name? Noem?
Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem. Yeah, I would say she would be. She would have to be close to the top. But if you're going to replace Pence, if you are going to pull the trigger, it's got to be Nikki Haley. It's just got to be.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Nikki Haley unless And the only thing I could see her doing would be if she sees that the poll numbers are bad, she might not want to take it. And at that point, he may try to look to other states and say, is there someone that could deliver a state to him that he needs?
Right.
Is there a woman in Arizona? Is there a woman in Iowa, like the popular governor of Iowa? Maybe that she might be a fit for him
Right.
as his vice president. Or is there another politician? Now, interestingly, in a lot of the swing states, in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the three states he really needs to carry, all of those swung pretty hard back to the left, and most of the state elected officials are Democrats.
Right. Well, I know Wisconsin, they pulled some shenanigans in their last election, and they did it specifically because there was a spot open on the Supreme Court, and they wanted their right-wing candidate to take that, and they thought if they pulled enough shenanigans that it would be impossible for the Democrat to win. And lo and behold, not only did the Democrat win, but she won with a pretty wide margin. And so, just kind of shows you where the country is and hopefully where it's headed in 2020.
Absolutely. All right, enough of that speculation. We will wait and see what happens with that. All right, G-Man, you got a wild card for us tonight?
Yeah, I actually have a couple, so I want to throw out a couple things. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a move on. People were successful in suing the KKK and basically taking their headquarters and land and that kind of thing. And basically, as an organized group, they put the KKK out of business. Now they're trying to do the same thing with the NRA. And so I wondered if you might have some thoughts on that, Mr. D.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that Letitia James, the state attorney general of New York, who's an up-and-coming star, by the way, she's filed suit against the National Rifle Association for campaign finance violations, for lots of things. And based in Oklahoma City, the NRA is involved in another lawsuit as well against their former advertising agency, Ackerman McQueen,
right,
where there's allegations back and forth about billing discrepancies, about and there's factions within the NRA that on the board that don't support the leadership, Wayne LaPierre and some of the other leaders. And so the NRA is really in a mess right now.
Yep.
And they've got two major lawsuits going. The NRA TV's been canceled. So I guess Dana Loesch, the radio personality, will have to rely on her Super Beats commercials to be able to survive. But, I think it's interesting that what starts off as an advocacy group ends up being a multi-billion-dollar boondoggle. It's not the first advocacy group that's been tied up and caught up in this kind of thing because hubris and people get involved. But it is interesting that it's happening in the era of Donald Trump, considering he pretty much put the blueprint together for a lot of this. So I think they're going to be a challenge. I think the president has weighed in and said he thinks they should disband and reestablish in the state of Texas where the laws are more favorable to them, those kinds of things, and incorporate there. But I think most gun owners don't view guns the way that the NRA does, but they feel challenged that they have to support the NRA. I think there's a lot of room right now where a gun rights group could come on board that said, hey, we believe in people's right to bear arms. We don't believe in people having AR-15s and bazookas and everything else. And so I think there's some space for that to be able to happen. I mean, George H.W. Bush, many years ago, he disavowed them and canceled his membership in the NRA because of the right-wing bent of it.
Yeah, well, because they were in favor of armor-piercing bullets, and they were lobbying Congress to allow regular gun owners like you and me to have armor-piercing bullets. And every police agency in the country was against it. And there was Wayne LaPierre lobbying hard to let people have those bullets. So, the other thing I saw is that their membership rolls are down, their donations and purchases of merchandise are down. So they're basically on the verge of bankruptcy. And these two lawsuits are going to cost them well over $100 million to defend. So, yeah, I think they're in trouble. Moving on, I wanted to see what you thought about the NBA players. So I don't know if you saw this or if our viewers did, but the NBA basically canceled a slew of games because the players refused to play in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is, basically taking center stage these days. So tell us what your take is on that, Chris.
Yeah, I think the NBA players, and might I also note WNBA players as well, are both in a bubble in Orlando right now. And I think they recognize the fact that people are watching them more closely than ever. They've got a strong statement or a strong platform to be able to make statements. And they've done so already with being able to have logos like Black Lives Matter, equality, perseverance, those kinds of things on their jerseys. And so it reaches a point in society where when you see these killings by police officers, that for any law-abiding citizen, anybody that has compassion in their heart, enough is enough.
Right.
I mean, when you see the police allow a 17-year-old to shoot 3 people with a semi-automatic rifle and then walk past them, not be apprehended, and have to be apprehended at his home in Illinois the next day. Yet this gentleman walked away from police and was trying to get in his car with 3 little kids in it, gets shot 7 times in the back.
Right.
I mean, it's beyond too much, and it's not unprecedented for athletes to protest like this. Right. Bill Russell led a boycott in 1961, and so it's a shame that we're still having to have these discussions now. But Chris Webber, the former player for the Sacramento Kings and also the Fab Five from Michigan when he played there, he made a great comment that really hit me yesterday. He said, "If not now, when?"
Right.
So I think the players are taking an admirable stand. There's a lot of people that want to push them and say they should just shut up and play, but they're not robots, and they're not just here for our entertainment. They're people too. I had a pretty lengthy debate online with someone who had an opposing viewpoint a while back, and they told me these guys are privileged. They live in fancy houses and they drive fancy cars, but they still face the same type of reality if they're going down I-35 in Oklahoma City, or they're going down I-70 in Denver. They still face the same realities where they could be stopped by the police and by someone who has a racist belief and face the same kinds of things, even though that they have privilege. So to me, that has nothing to do with it, other than the fact that they have a platform that they can influence it. And I applaud them. I think they're doing a great thing by taking a stand.
Right. Yeah, I do too. I'm with you there. So lastly, our last little wild card topic. As you and I have discussed in a previous life, I was a sports writer for a couple different newspapers, and one of my favorite coaches, probably my all-time favorite college coach, mostly because he was short like me and he came out and stood on a box every time he spoke to the media, was Lou Holtz. And Lou Holtz is back in the news because of some comments that he made last night at the Republican National Convention. So why don't you fill us in on that, Chris? And
first of all, I'm shocked because I thought your favorite college coach was Tommy Tuberville.
Right. The senator from Alabama, it looks like.
Well, we'll see. Doug Jones has got some great ads going up right now.
Right.
And so we'll see how that plays out, because Tuberville so far, he wouldn't debate Jeff Sessions, and he's refusing to debate Doug Jones as well. So
right, because
he's just hoping to.
He doesn't have much upstairs, so.
Yeah, he's hoping to run out the clock. Now, right. Lou Holtz has been known for a long time to be active in Republican politics, and caused quite a bit of controversy last night because he said any Catholic who supports Joe Biden is not a real Catholic. And right. So I think it's pretty gutsy for somebody to make any kind of statement about someone else's faith, because to me, everybody's faith is between them and the God of their choice, and it's up to them to make those kinds of decisions. You know, it's especially ironic to me that Lou Holtz is saying and criticizing Joe Biden's religion when he's supporting probably the most anti-religion candidate we've ever had, even though people want to say, oh, he supports this and he supports that. Donald Trump doesn't have a real religious conviction at all. He said before, he's never asked for forgiveness from God because he doesn't feel like he has anything to repent for.
Right. Well, and he doesn't even know how to hold a Bible straight.
Yeah, and he was quoting 2 Corinthians on the 2016 campaign trail, and he said one of his favorite verses was in 2 Corinthians. So so it's just ironic to me. It's the simple fact that you and I have both been around politics a long time, and a lot of our viewers have too, to know that a lot of times people try to paint the biggest strength that you have as your biggest weakness. They try to flip it around. And Joe Biden's been a lifelong Catholic. He goes to mass every day. He has leaned on his faith to get through a lot of tragic situations, including the car wreck where his first wife was killed and his daughter as well. Right. And then the passing of his oldest son, Bo, to cancer. So he's used his faith to get through his challenges. And by all accounts is a really strong man of faith when Donald Trump is not. So for Lou Holtz to get up there and criticize somebody for political gain, to me, it's just the height of hypocrisy. I mean, if you want to criticize Joe Biden's beliefs on certain issues, that's fine. But I would never criticize anybody as far as their religious beliefs go.
Well, to me, it just shows, and we'll see how that plays out. But at least for me, it just shows how desperate they are to show what a great guy Donald Trump is. And if this race were based on morality alone, it'd be 99-1, in favor of Biden. Because, I mean, you look at what like you just said, all the stuff the guy's done. He took the train in every day so he could be home with his kids when he was a young senator. You've never heard anything scandalous, anything of substance about him. And yet, Trump has time and time again had things come out about him, multiple affairs, people he swindled, banks he's kind of hung out to dry. And, we'll talk about the New York AG and Chicago case here in an upcoming podcast with Mr. Trump. But, it just shows to me kind of that they're desperate. And one thing I'd like to say is that Notre Dame, which has always been one of my favorite schools, they came out today and they disavowed Coach Holtz for his comments. Yeah.
Yeah, so. It's everybody has a right to their political beliefs, and he, Coach Holtz definitely has a right to his beliefs and however he wants to think on these types of things. But at the same time, it's like, it just amazes me that this is who he wants to tie his reputation to.
Right.
When and Coach Holtz has done a lot of good through the years. He's done a lot of things where he's been involved with charities, and he's done a lot of things that's helped a lot of people. It kind of reminds me a little bit of one of my favorite coaches, but pretty disappointing person in a lot of things when it comes to political. But Coach Mike Ditka is the same way, where he's come out pretty forcefully and been a strong critic. He was a big critic of President Obama when he was in office. And it's funny to me a lot of times that I'd love to have Coach Holtz, if he's watching, I'd love to have him come join us on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask him for some substantive things that he disagrees with Joe Biden on and that he agrees with Donald Trump on, because I found a lot of times that there are folks who want to criticize, you and I have talked about this many times, but when President Obama was in office, there were a lot of people that would say, I just can't stand Obama. And you would say, well, what can you not stand about him?
Right.
Well, Obamacare. And you'd say, okay, well, what about Obamacare? And they couldn't tell you.
Right.
They couldn't tell you what they really didn't like. And So I know there's a lot of times people don't like a personality, and that's fine. That's everybody's right. But to say that Catholics that support Joe Biden are not real Catholics, I wouldn't say that about a Catholic who supported Donald Trump. I don't think he's a very religious person. I personally don't think he follows the teachings of Christ as closely as other people do, but I wouldn't say anybody's not a real Catholic for following them. Just like I wouldn't say anybody's not a real Baptist or a real Muslim or a real Hindu, either way.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's all I've got. Do you have any wild cards for tonight?
I think that's it, man. I gave you the option to throw one wild card at me, and you threw three. So I'm gonna have to come with my A game next time.
Right. Yep. As you do every week. Well, that's it for this week's GD Report podcast. We hope you're enjoying these. We've got some good topics coming up. We, as of now, we're planning to go live on election night. So be sure and jump in there and join us for that. And if you miss it, we'll have it. We're also going to record that, so we'll have it up on our YouTube channel and on the website afterwards, so people can review and take a look at that. So
absolutely, yeah. And just remind everybody, get out and register to vote if you haven't. Learn your state's election laws. If you're going to vote by mail, request the ballot early. Get the ballot in early. We want everybody's vote to count this time. This is an important, crucial election. Yep. We already talked a little bit about some of the upcoming topics, but look for some topics about we're going to do an update, I think, on some Senate races. We'll obviously have a lot of things to talk about with the upcoming debates. We're going to talk about the Electoral College. And we're also going to go ahead and handicap 2024 because we know you're not sick of political commercials for 2020 yet.
Right.
And so we might as well gear up for 2024. But we'll talk about handicapping, particularly the Republican field.
Yeah, and we might even get into another look at those Lincoln Project ads, which are still on the air and have caused a little bit of controversy, not because of the ads, but because of some of the players behind the scenes. And we'll talk about that at a later podcast too.
Yeah, they just released a blistering one on Mike Pence today. I don't know if you saw it, Jimmy.
I did. Yeah, I saw that.
Whew.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
I said it was blistering.
It was blistering. You're right. It showed some old radio footage, right?
Yes.
On the radio. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, folks, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time. That's, as they say in showbiz, that's a wrap.
Take care.